Greetings to all my brothers and sisters, my dear friends. Thanks for stopping by. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Give me a comment, question, something. Talk to me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. We've talked about a lot of things. I've laid a good portion of my life out in front of you. It hasn't been easy, but my hopes and prayers are that it will encourage someone, help someone that has experienced similar things, or maybe the details of your abuse are different. Nevertheless, the pain, the scars are still there. I brought you from standing on a coffee table in a white cotton baby diaper with a glass baby bottle in my mouth in front of a picture window for a long time throughout the day. I brought you from there to a mad rush to get ready for the end of the world by 1977. And now we've moved past that. And now Micah, the minor prophet, is on the scene at the Tabernacle of God, which was the stepdad's church in Ohio. Even after 1977 came and went, and nothing happened as was supposed. By this time, I was pretty much sucked into the vortex, the vacuum of the message of William Branham. Like I said, my first familiarization with that was in 1965, the age of 9 years old. So many things that he spoke about as I got older, I found out to be truth. I could see it in the scriptures. However, as time went on, I began to see also major contradictions and discrepancies and discovered chronic embellished stories that just wasn't adding up. I guess as I look back on it now, the underlying motivation behind all of this, all of my actions, of course, was to get closer to God, to find a forgiveness based on what Jesus said, a forgiveness for my stepdad, and to try to bridge the gap between him and I. I had this big hole in my heart. I still do. I had this big hole in my heart. I really wanted a father, at least a father figure. Now, as I said, growing up as a little boy, my parental figures were my grandmother and my grandfather. But still, I knew that my biological father had died, and I wanted someone, not that they could totally fill that void, but someone in a stepdad role that could make a connection that I didn't have. So I threw myself, I totally committed myself to his ministry and the church. I started out playing the drums. I then moved on to the worship leader. And from there, I began to minister. As I began to minister, in addition, I totally committed myself to the study of William Branham's messages compiled in what's called spoken word books and on tapes and CDs and eventually DVDs, and began to study the message as it was called, to find out if he was truly an end-time prophet. I completely committed myself to that. I would listen to my stepdad preach. I would listen to William Branham preach. and many things were parallel until the announcement was made, as you've heard me say in a previous video, that Micah, the minor prophet, was here, and he was the minor prophet to Elijah, William Branham, the major prophet. Also during this time, I began to see an undercurrent. I began to observe things that were straying from the scripture, from the text and the context. Prophecies were being given by my mother, by him, by other people in the church. Specific things were being prophesied that was, well, they were not coming to pass. It turned towards money every Sunday because the major service was one service on Sunday. Every Sunday, the secretary and treasurer would usually take the offering and just pretty much browbeat the people and make sure that they were faithful in their tithes and offering. Remember, they had a pretty good sized black box made for the offering, and that black box would be pulled out on the platform, and on the box were written the scriptures in Malachi. I believe it's Malachi 3. And that scripture was always quoted each time an offering was taken. Wherein have you robbed God? In tithes and offerings. And then the people would get a serious reprimand to ensure that they were faithful, always faithful to pay their tithes and offerings. I also begin to notice first a subtle change in the direction of the messages from the pulpit, where even the fundamentals of the gospel was being ignored. Because as I began to understand as time went on, the foundation was being laid for this cult spirit that had come into the church, where Micah, the minor prophet, was now on the scene. And if people wanted to make the rapture, really understand the revelation of Jesus Christ, they would hear Ted Lewis, Micah, the minor prophet. In my travels, when I would go out and minister from time to time, and these were pastors of what was called message end time churches that also followed William Branham's teachings, I also noticed that with each pastor, I would always be pulled aside, sometimes just in the home or in their offices, and they would share with me the deeper revelations that they felt they had regarding things that William Branham had said. I would listen intently. Now remember, I was just a young man. Many things I had numerous questions about. But as they shared with me their deeper revelations, well, this is what he really meant here, and this is what he really meant here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then when they would get done, sometimes 2 or 3, 4 hours, well, what do you think? I would say, well, I can see some possibilities there, but I don't think I see it as you see it, as the whole picture. Well, then I begin to notice that the pastors begin to draw away from me because I didn't buy into their special, very special revelation. And you know how preachers talk. Rather, you know how preachers gossip. I'm sure that my name began to be circulated amongst the message churches, and I was singled out as one that just didn't quite meet the standard of what was called an end time William Branham message. And then I began to notice as I would go to special meetings, the message pastors and evangelists, et cetera, most of the time it was just quoting from William Branham. William Branham said, Brother Branham said, the prophet said, just quote. And the scriptures were being left in the shadows. Or if they quoted this scripture, they placed William Branham's interpretation on that scripture. Sometimes it was true, other times not so. The result was eventually I had to start asking questions. And in future videos, I'll get into more detail where, as I understand right now, I'm being rather vague, but I'm just laying a foundation for what's coming. I will provide details of my questions and why I questioned things as I did. But nonetheless, I could see that the bubble was about to burst. It wasn't because there was such an indoctrination of man-made teachings and such a departure from the gospel itself. That's just not sustainable. Sooner or later, something's going to start unraveling. It'll start falling apart. So I'll fast forward here a little bit. By 1983, I was so confused, full of anxiety, feeling like I had fallen into a deep hole. I couldn't take it anymore. I thought I've got to get out of town for a while. So, to make a long story short, arrangements was made for me to go to Washington State and just get out of Ohio for a while and pray and get my thoughts clear. So in September of 1983, I jumped on a Greyhound bus, left my family back in Ohio at that time because I was going to go out there, get everything ready within a couple months, and then they were able to come out, and that's what I did. And so we'll pick the rest of the story up in the next video. Until then, God bless. Thank you for stopping by. Tell your friends, your family, your relatives, your enemies. I would like to see more subscriptions or subscribers. I really appreciate that. Leave your comments. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. And remember, Jesus Christ is the only way, the only truth, and the only life.